If you kept managing your money the exact same way you do today, do you think you would actually be richer by 2026? Most people assume that become richer means working harder, earning more money, or making extreme financial moves. But in reality, it usually comes down to a few simple systems that most people never build. Welcome to Wealth Basics channel, and in this video I'm going to walk you through 5 simple strategies that can generally help you start 2026 richer. Not by tracking every cent, and not by cutting all joy out of your life, and definitely not by chasing shortcuts. These are strategies built around clarity, predictability, and long-term thinking. And what makes this different is that each strategy builds on the previous one. We will start by stopping silent money mistakes, then create visibility, plan ahead, increase your earning potential, and finally tie everything together with systems that actually last. If you stay until the end, you won't just have ideas, you will have a framework you can reuse every single year. Let's start with the first strategy, the invisible money leaks that quietly keep most people from ever getting ahead. Eliminate invisible money leaks. Let me start with a simple question. Do you actually know where your money goes every month? Not approximately, not in theory, but in practice. Most people feel like they have a decent idea, but when they look at their bank account or credit card statement, they are often surprised. Not because of a big dramatic purchase, but because of dozens of small ones. This is what I like to think of invisible money leaks. They're not obvious. They don't trigger alarm bells. And that is exactly why they matter. It is the slightly more expensive option you choose without thinking. It is the convenience purchase at the end of the long day. It is buying something new, even though you already have more than enough. Each decision feels harmless, but over time they compound, just not in your favor. Now let's talk about credit cards. Credit cards themselves aren't the problem. In fact, when used intentionally, they can be incredibly useful. The issue is what they do to our psychology. When you pay with cash, there is a clear sense of loss, but when you pay with a credit card, that feeling is delayed. You tap, the transaction is approved, and life moves on. Weeks later, the statement arrives. You pay it off, and only then do you start wondering how the total becomes so high. That delay creates a disconnect between spending and awareness, and this becomes even more problematic when you add recurring expenses, subscriptions, memberships, monthly charges that run quietly in the background. Individually, they seem negligible. Collectively, they can take a meaningful bite out of your income. Money usually doesn't vanish in one big moment. It fades away through small, repeated decisions. So how do we actually fix this? Let's start with something very practical. Open your most recent credit card statement. Not just the total, but the full list of transactions. Now do one simple thing. Look specifically for recurring charges, streaming services, apps, software tools, gyms, subscriptions you may have signed up for months or even years ago. For each one, ask a very straightforward questions. Am I still actively using this? Not was this useful at some point, but would I sign up for this again today? If the answer is no, cancel it. This exercise alone often frees up a surprise amount of money without charging your lifestyle at all. Next, let's talk about day-to-day spending. One of the most effective ideas from financial psychology is introducing a moment of intentional pause before spending. Before buying something, especially on your card, ask yourself, can I comfortably afford this right now without relying on future income? Am I buying this because I need it or because it's convenient or emotional? If I didn't buy this today, would my life actually be worse? These questions aren't about restriction, they are about awareness. Now, credit cards specifically. A helpful mental rule is this. Treat your credit card like a debit card with a delay. Only spend money you already have. Only buy things you could pay for today, in full. This immediately removes the illusion of extra money that credit cards create. And finally, make this a habit. Once a month, sit down for 10 minutes, review a statement, look for patterns, not perfection. Financial clarity doesn't come from extreme budgeting. It comes from regular, calm reflection. Because wealth isn't built only by earning more. It's built by keeping what you earn. Organize all your finances. Now let me tell you something that might feel a little uncomfortable at first, but is actually very freeing once you see it clearly. You don't have a money problem, you have a visibility problem. Because if you can't see where your money is going, you can't really control it. And when you don't control your money ends up controlling you. This is how most people actually live. A paycheck comes in, for a brief moment they feel fine. The rent gets paid, the credit card balance gets cleared, or at least partially. A few subscriptions run the background, groceries, coffee, delivery, random small purchases through the month. Nothing feel excessive, not feel responsible. And yet, as the weeks go by, the balance slowly drops. And then you check your account near the end of the month and think, wait, didn't I just get paid? And the plan, if there's one, becomes simple. Let's just get to the next month. That is not financial planning. That is financial autopilot. And usually you believe that money magically organizes itself, like waiting for Santa Claus to show up with extra cash. Living this way keeps you stuck in reaction mode, not control mode. You are not choosing where your money goes. You are just hoping it works out. So what does real financial organization looks like? Here's the good news. It's much simpler than most people think. You don't need complex spreadsheets. You don't need fancy apps. You don't need to become an accountant. You just need clarity. You start by writing everything down. How much money comes in, how much money goes out, and exactly where it goes. Income, rent or mortgage, credit card payments, subscription, fixed expenses, anything that repeats every single month. Put it all in one place, because something interesting happens when you do this. When your finances live only in your head, they feel vague and overwhelming. When you put them on a paper or on a screen, they become concrete. You start to notice patterns. You start seeing where you are consistently overspending, and without forcing it, you start making better decisions. Organization creates awareness, awareness creates control, and control is the foundation of anyone who builds long-term wealth. But organization doesn't stop at listing numbers. Once everything is visible, the next step is analysis. This is where the real change happens. Look at where your money is actually going and ask, is this aligned with the life I'm trying to build? For example, if rent is taking up an uncomfortable large portion of income, maybe it's worth considering a smaller place, a different neighborhood, or even sharing a space for a period of time. If transportation costs are usually high, maybe there's an opportunity to reduce car expenses, or use public transportation more, or rethink how necessary that cost really is. Or if food and convenience spending keeps creeping up every month, you might realize that a bit of planning at home saves far more money than trying to budget harder later. The goal isn't to cut everything, it's to align your spending with your priorities. Because without visibility, it doesn't matter how much you earn, the money will always feel like it disappears. But when you see your finances clearly, you stop guessing, you start choosing. And that shift from reacting to deciding is what turns organization into real financial power. Plan predictable expenses. Now pay attention to this, because this is where a lot of people go wrong. Even people who feel like they are good with money. Let me ask you a simple question. What do you think a predictable expense is? Here is the easiest example. Your birthday. I can tell you when it is. I don't know you personally, but you do. You know it's coming. You know roughly how much you usually spend. And yet, for many people, it still feels like a financial hit every single year. And birthdays are just the beginning. Trips, holiday, special dates, Christmas, family events. None of these are surprises. And yet, every year, people say things like, this month was tight, this month was unusual. But the truth is, it wasn't unusual. It was poorly planned. Most financial stress doesn't come from true emergencies. It comes from expenses that were completely predictable, but ignored. When you don't prepare for predictable expenses, they feel like crises. But when you plan for them, they become just another line in your finances. So, how do you actually plan for predictable expenses? This is where topic 2 becomes essential. Once you have written everything down, your income, your fixed expenses, your recurring costs, you have created a clear picture of your present. Now we extend that clarity into the future. Start by listing predictable events for the year ahead. Birthday, holiday, trips, annual subscription, any expense you know will happen. Then do something very simple. Estimate the total cost of each one. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be realistic. Now divide that number by 12. That is it. Instead of absorbing the full cost at once, you spread it calmly across the year, a little bit every month. This small shift changes everything, because now, when the expense arrives, the money is already waiting for it. No panic, no stress, no feeling of this ruined my month. You have traded surprise for preparation. This isn't just a financial technique, it's an emotional one. Money stress isn't all about numbers, it's about uncertainty. When you know you are prepared, your nervous system relaxes, you sleep better, you make better decisions, you stop reacting and start responding. Predictability creates stability, and stability creates freedom. Because when your finances are predictable, your life becomes lighter, and that's the real goal. Invest in skills and knowledge. At this point, something important happens. If you have done the work from the previous steps, like you organized your finances, you closed the leaks, you planned predictable expenses, you start noticing something new. There's a little bit of breathing room, not a fortune, but a margin. And this is where many people get stuck. They keep trying to optimize, they keep cutting, they keep squeezing, but there comes a point where cutting expense isn't the answer anymore, because there are hard limits to how much you can reduce, but there is no real limit to how much you can earn. And this is when an uncomfortable truth shows up. Money doesn't respond to effort, it responds to value. The problem is that many people want higher income without becoming more valuable. They look for shortcuts. They wait for promotions, they hope the market changes, but income rarely grows by accident. Here's the shift in mindset that changes everything. Once your financial foundation is stable, the extra breathing room you create shouldn't go toward lifestyle upgrades first. You should go toward investing in yourself, because today skills are more valuable than titles. More valuable than degrees, more valuable than credentials on paper, skills that compound, the ability to communicate clearly, the ability to sell ideas, the ability to solve meaningful problems, the ability to do something useful that most people can't. This skill travels with you. You're not tied to one job, or one company, or one economy, and learning is never neutral. You are either actively investing in your skill set, or slowly paying the price of falling behind. Every book you read, every course you take, every skill you intentionally develop, it's not an expense, it's a leverage. It's a bridge between where you are today and the opportunities you want to access tomorrow. And this is why this step matters so much, because once you have stopped the money from leaking, and once you have created structure and predictability, investing in skills is how you change your financial trajectory, not by working harder, but by becoming more valuable. Discipline and consistency. And now we come to the least glamorous part of the entire process, but easily the most important one, because none of what we talked about actually works without it. Discipline. And I'm not talking about extreme discipline, not to become a completely different person, but consistency. Here's the real problem most people face. They start strong, they eliminate money leaks, they organize their finances, they plan predictable expenses, they even invest in learning and improve themselves, and then they stop. Not because they failed, not because it didn't work. And this is the uncomfortable truth. Most financial plans don't fail, they fade, not from one bad decision, but from a lack of follow-up. The issue isn't knowledge. At this point, you already know what to do. The issue is continuity. When most people hear the word discipline, they think of willpower, doing the hard thing, forcing yourself. But real discipline looks much quieter than that. It's about building systems that work, even when motivation is low. It's about making the right behavior the default option. For example, reviewing your finances once a month, not every day, not obsessively, just consistently. Checking your budget, your subscriptions, your plans, even when nothing feels urgent. Adjusting, not restarting. Discipline isn't about doing something impressive once, it's about doing simple things repeatedly. Okay, now think about the previous steps. Eliminating money leaks only works if you keep noticing them. Organizing your finances only matters if you continue looking at the numbers. Planning predictable expenses only helps if you revisit and update the plan. Investing in skills only compounds if you keep learning, even when progress feels low. Discipline is the glue that holds all these things together, and the consistency is what turns good ideas into real results. And here is something worth remembering. The people who build wealth aren't the ones who do something extraordinary once. They are the ones who do the basics, done well, for a very long time. They don't aim for perfection, they aim for continuation. Because the only real mistake in this process is stopping. Small actions repeated over time will always beat massive plans that never leave the paper. And when discipline becomes part of who you are, not something you constantly fight, financial progress stops feeling heavy, it becomes sustainable. And that's how real wealth is built. Thank you for watching.